Hey there, friends. Welcome to my latest Q video. It is October 28th, 2025. It has been 8 years since Q's first post on 4chan, and I'm here to give you a little bit of an update looking back at the Q operation 8 years after it began, and just share my thoughts on the entire operation. I'm getting a lot of questions on YouTube now. Now that I'm back on YouTube, questions from people who are looking at some of the videos I posted and saying, is this still going on? Is it a thing? What do you think of Q now? 8 years later, was it a PSYOP? Some people are looking at what's happening saying, oh man, it's all coming true. So I'm going to give you, I don't know if this is going to be a short or a long video. I have a lot of thoughts on Q. I'm just going to share those thoughts here. So I literally was following the Q post from the very beginning. Early, I think first week of November, last part of October, there were people looking at the posts that Q was dropping on 4chan. Tracy Beans got on it right away. She was one of the early followers. She was looking at the messages. She was decoding them on her YouTube channel. Denise was following Tracy Beans and following along, and I was listening in the background going, I don't understand any of this junk. But God started giving me dreams related to Q. And I was like, okay, hang on. Maybe I need to take this thing seriously. So I began looking at the posts, and it took me a while. It took me a month or two to get a handle on what this was all about. And then, I have a few older videos from December of 2017 where I talk a little bit about the Q posts. I started doing actual decodes in January 2018. Once I got my sea legs, once I kind of figured out what this whole thing is about, that's when I started doing the decodes. And I have put out over 250 videos about Q since then. I really only do Q videos when Q is posting. All right, so there's a lot of people who are doing live streams on X and Facebook and YouTube, and they're still doing decodes, and a lot of them are doing deltas. A delta is, best way to think of it is like if Q makes a post on a certain date, let's say October 28th, 2017, and that today, 8 years later, October 28th, 2025, that's an 8-year delta, right? So a delta is a marker. It's two markers in time. There can be a 10-minute delta. President Trump makes a post, Q drops a post 10 minutes later, it's a 10-minute delta. All right. Q has used those 5-minute, 10-minute deltas early on as a way to suggest that he was close to President Trump. And the deltas have been, the zero deltas in particular, have been used as proofs to suggest that Q is close to President Trump. There have been, I think, the last time I counted, there were 33 zero deltas in Q's operation, where Q posted first, President Trump followed, and within 1 minute. So they had the post had the same timestamp, but Q posted first within 1 minute. Zero delta. It's been 33 of those, and in one day there were actually 3 zero deltas in a day where Q and Trump posted simultaneously, Q posting first. So when Q has gone dark, or when Q switches from one board to another board to another board, Q has been on 4chan and several boards on 8chan, and then 8kun. Whenever Q has to switch to a board, Q updates his trip code. He creates a new trip code, and he always warns the board in advance, hey, trip code update is coming. And the trip code update usually coincides with a tweet by President Trump. It's a zero delta. So Q posts, President Trump posts, same time, and then boom, you get the trip code update. That is one way that Q has affirmed continually throughout the operation that it's been the same person in control of that account, in control of the trip code. So the reason I'm saying all this partly is to give some explanation for people who don't understand how we know whether this is, the original Q, or, a lot of people have said, oh, April of 2018, it was taken over by somebody else. And I don't think there's any evidence to support those claims. I believe the person who has posted most recently, November of 2022, is the same person who posted October 28th of 2017. Just my opinion. But the deltas. There are a lot of people out there on social media who are doing videos breaking down all these deltas. This delta, that delta, taking the timestamps and the post numbers and trying to make some connections in those things. I personally, I'm not impressed with any of that. I don't think there's much relevance to most of it. However, once in a while, there will be a very interesting coincidence that makes you go, I wonder if this is actually a coincidence. The day that James Comey was indicted, back in, was it July or August? It was interesting because there was a 5-year delta. All right, the day Comey got indicted, there was a 5-year delta where Q posted a link to a tweet by James Comey. And in the tweet, Comey was professing his innocence regarding all the claims that Trump made about him being a crooked cop. And I thought, okay, wait a minute, hang on a sec. Comey posts a tweet proclaiming his innocence. Exactly. Q posts that link to that tweet, and on the 5-year anniversary of Q's post, Comey's indicted. I think that's, is it a coincidence? Maybe. The other possible explanation is that Pam Bondi or somebody in the DOJ was instructed by Trump or Dan Scavino or somebody who's on the Q team, hey, we want Comey to be indicted on this day. And we have a special reason for that, so just make sure he's indicted on this day. And they say, okay, well, hey, we'll make that happen. And they may not even know why they're being told it has to be on this day. But sometimes in the mind of Trump and Scavino and the team, they will have people do things on certain days at certain times. And I think the people doing it don't even know what's going on. Let me give you an example. Here's a really interesting one. So, and this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest Q proofs of all. So go back to 2019. The deep state managed to deplatform 8chan. They got it taken down. And Jim Watkins, it took him 3 months to get another platform set up, 8kun, to get a board set up. They set up a Q research board. And Q comes back and starts posting on 8kun under the same trip code. So Q and CodeMonkey are going back and forth about, CodeMonkey's like, well, we need to do a salt rotation. And Q's like, well, I got this old trip code we have to resolve here. Like, can you hold on the salt rotation until I can have time to deal with this trip code issue? And CodeMonkey's like, okay, whatever. So what Q did was, when the Horowitz DOJ Inspector General report on FISA abuse was about to be dropped. Q tells the board, okay, trip update coming. That post was a 0 delta with a tweet by President Trump. And then Q changes his trip code, and then he posts a watch. It's a picture of a watch. We've all seen this watch before. It's in a lot of the watch proofs. And the watch has a time of 1:29 on it. All right. And we're all scratching our heads like, okay, what does that mean? There's a watch with 129. Nobody knew what it meant. All right. Exactly a week later, the FISA report from the DOJ is posted on the Inspector General's Twitter account at exactly 129. Exactly 7 days later, from when Q posted that watch picture with the watch showing 129, at 129 Eastern time, we always do timestamps, Eastern time zone, because that's where the White House is. DOJ Inspector General's report posts the FISA, a PDF version of the Inspector General's report on FISA abuse. At the same time, 129, Attorney General Bill Barr posts his comment and his objection with some of the findings of the report. And also at 129, U.S. Attorney John Durham, he posts his response to the report on FISA abuse at 129 on the Connecticut U.S. Attorney's account. So you have the Connecticut U.S. Attorney who posts his response to the FISA report at 129. Bill Barr posts his response to the FISA report at 129. And the report itself is posted at 129. All of them exactly a week after Q posted a watch showing the time 129. Yes, I'm sure that's just a coincidence, and Q had nothing to do with any of that. All right. That is an example of a delta. All right. And like I said, some people are out there on social media. They're doing all these, looking at all the deltas and stuff. I don't know that there's a whole lot of relevance to most of it. Personally, I think a lot of what Q has posted in the past doesn't have a lot of relevance today. Just my opinion. There are some things that are still relevant, in my opinion, and most of them have to do with the FISA scandal, which President Trump calls a Russia hoax. Some people call it Spygate. A lot of that information is still relevant today because those people are now under criminal investigation by Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, and the crew at FBI and DOJ. Oh, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this Delta thing is, like I said, I think sometimes President Trump, Scavino, Q, whoever, they're giving instructions to people like the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut or the Attorney General to do certain things, to post certain things at a certain time, to make the Delta happen, to make the zero Delta happen. And so that's part of the operation. But deltas are not the only part of the operation. There's a lot more to it. At bottom, Q's operation is a military intelligence operation designed to expose institutional corruption. Full stop. And that's what it is. It is an operation where Q posts information, links, videos, declassified documents, social media posts that piece together evidence of institutional corruption. That's what Q's operation is all about. And if you think of it in those terms, it's really simple. That's what it's about. If someone is talking about Q in some way that doesn't have to do with the exposure of institutional corruption, they're not talking about Q. They're talking about some extraneous issue that's unrelated. So it is interesting to me that we are now seeing the investigation and prosecution of the Spygate conspirators. So when John Ratcliffe, back in, I think it was June or July, made those criminal referrals to Pam Bondi at DOJ for John Brennan, former CIA director, and then they got criminal referrals for Comey and Clapper. I was like, okay, Well, I guess we're in the justice phase of the operation now. And it looks like, after all these years, President Trump finally has people at FBI and DOJ. He's getting rid of a lot of the deadwood and the deep staters. We finally have people in the justice system who are seriously going after this criminal cabal. Whether the courts allow that to happen or not is another issue. Back in 2017, 2018, most of us did not know how corrupt our court system is. Now we know. Now we know. It's pretty bad. Fortunately, I think that Trump's people have learned some lessons from the attempted prosecution by John Durham in Virginia and D.C. With Spygate. They prosecuted Sussman and Danchenko and Kleinsmith. And Kleinsmith pleaded guilty. Sussman and Danchenko acquitted because, well, those juries 100% in the tank for Hillary and the Democrats. So it looks like the grand juries that are impaneled right now are impaneled outside of Virginia and D.C. in other areas where there's probably a more likely outcome of a fair verdict being rendered if wherever those cases go and wherever they're tried in a criminal court. I'm cautiously optimistic about that happening. When, like I said, when I saw those criminal referrals being made, and then you have, people like Mike Davis and some other people who are connected to the DOJ and Trump people talking about this conspiracy investigation, I became much more optimistic about the actual prosecution of these corrupt people. And I know there's a lot of people on social media who are screaming, they're guilty of treason. Hey, we got to charge them with treason. There's got to be military tribunals and all this other stuff. Q said no deals. Well, okay. Q said a lot of stuff in 2017 and 2018. A lot of things have changed since then. What has changed? Well, let me tell you what's changed. And look, when it comes to Q, I have always tried to play it level, play it straight. I call balls and strikes. If Q posts something that I think he just nailed something really well, I'll say, you know what? You nailed it. Good on you, mate. If Q misses it, I'm the first one to say, look, I don't think that was, I think that was a bad call. I'm not down with that. And here's some examples. Q told us early on, trust Sessions, trust Chris Wray, trust Mike Pompeo, Kansas and Pompeo, and all these other people, and suggested that these white hats, I hate the term white hats. I don't like the black hat, white hat dichotomy because that's not how the world actually works. There are no people who are purely benevolent. There are no people who are purely evil. Everyone is a little mix of both. And some people who are generally good do evil things, and some people who are generally evil occasionally do good things. It's a much more of a gray subject. I'm not going to get into that right now. But we were told by Q to trust all these people. Nakasone, General Nakasone at NSA. And most of them ended up being deep state corruptocrats. Nakasone allowed a lot of sick perversion and corruption to come into the NSA. Ezra Cohen has had a lot to say about that on his Twitter account, called Nakasone one of the worst people to ever be in the NSA and did a lot of damage to the agency during his time. Pompeo, it turns out, deep stater, is completely sold out. Is back in the war in Ukraine and all the chicanery that the deep state is doing. Jeff Sessions turned out to be a very weak person who just didn't have the intestinal fortitude to bring prosecutions. Chris Wray ended up being a deep state sympathizer. He faked this out for a while because he fired a bunch of people at FBI, but he still refused to investigate actual criminal activity, allowed horrendous things to happen with the FBI in January 6th. So all of that is to say, I think people, when they evaluate Q's correctness and predictions and assessments of character, there are some people who think that Q is like omniscient. Like Q is supposed to know everything. And I got out into conversations with people who literally think that everything Q ever said, predicted, character assessments were always 100% spot on. And I just don't think that's true. Q is human. Q is not omniscient. And Q obviously made mistakes. Q actually admitted to making mistakes. There's many posts, you go through them, where Q was like, yeah, we kind of misjudged that one. It didn't work out the way we thought. Chris Wray is a good example. If you go back through the posts in 2022, you'll see that Chris Wray has a photo there with an X through it that Anand put on there. That was Q's admission that, yeah, I misjudged Chris Wray's character. He ended up being a deep stater. All right. Q has made some, I think, incorrect character assessments about certain people. And he had the courage to stand up and say, yeah, I was wrong. That guy's a crook. Sorry for telling you that, to trust this guy. So we have to deal with those realities that President Trump and Q and a bunch of other people, they misjudged a lot of the people who were in the first Trump administration. But that doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater, because a lot of things that Q exposed, posted about, and I wouldn't want to say predicted, because Q is not in the business of predicting things. That's another mistake a lot of people make. I see a lot of people online and people leaving in comments on YouTube saying, oh, nothing that Q ever predicted came true. Well, here's your problem if that's your view. Q never claimed that he was going to correctly predict future events. In fact, one of the most recent posts, go on the board, says, I'm not a prophet, you're not a prophet, we are not prophets. Focus on the mission, or something to that effect. It was basically letting people know, look, I don't have a crystal ball. This isn't about me predicting the future. So if you're evaluating Q on that, by that criteria, you're missing it. That's not how you evaluate Q. That said, Q has hinted at events to come in very vague, cryptic fashion. And a lot of us have looked at these posts and didn't understand what he was talking about when the post was first dropped. We're all scratching our heads like, what in the world is this about? What do you mean? I don't get this whole Iron Eagle thing. What's that about? What is the Wizards and Warlocks? What is this? What's that? And then as time goes on and events play out, when the relevant event happens, you look back and go, oh man, he was telling us about this 3 months ago in a cryptic fashion. Q does not overtly make predictions. Q drops these cryptic clues and hints about future events. And then when the event happens, we all look back and go, oh, there it was. He was kind of hinting about it back there. Plausible deniability. Q's posts are crafted in such a way to foreshadow future events, to not give away the plot line to the enemy who are also reading Q's posts, but also in a way that allows us to look back when the event happens, look back and go, God, there it was right there. He was telling us about it, as evidence of foreknowledge. And so the question is, how does Q know the future? Q answered that question. Control. Q's not a time traveler. It's not Project Looking Glass. It's not, AI. when Q was asked, how do you know the future? Q said control. What does that mean? Q, being part of the Trump administration, Trump first administration, or in NSA or wherever the Q was working at the time, had access to the White House. And the White House has the ability to make things happen. So because the president can make things happen of his own volition, President Trump can set up posts through Q that are going to foreshadow things that he knows are going to happen because he's a president. He can make them happen. And he can just let Q know, hey, this is what we're posting about today. And in a couple of months, it's going to happen. So just, write the post and put it out there. That's how Q has been able to foreshadow the future. And it's interesting because we were told for many years that the corruption of the government, higher learning. So, colleges, the whole education system has been corrupted everywhere down to elementary school, up to institutions of higher learning, Stanford and Harvard, tons of corruption. That's being exposed. Corruption in Big Pharma. Q posted a lot about Big Pharma in 2020 during the COVID thing. That's being exposed. Corruption in the Vatican. Corruption in Congress. Corruption in the courts. Corruption in the media, the broadcast media, and corruption in social media. All of that corruption has been revealed through Q's posts, and it's all being exposed. It's all being kind of dealt with. We got mea culpa from YouTube and Zuckerberg at Facebook. They admitted that they allowed accounts to be suspended, taken down, deplatformed because political pressure from certain political people. All of that has been exposed. So to me, it's a lot of what Q has posted about has come out. It's been validated. We now know about it. And I think that what we're seeing currently with the investigation into Spygate, the likely indictment of, we could see Barack Obama indicted. I'm not predicting it, but here's the thing. Obama has presidential immunity for acts committed while he was in the Oval Office. However, after he leaves the Oval Office, he's a citizen. He doesn't have immunity. And there's this conspiracy going on. And the case could be made that it is conspiracy against rights, conspiracy against the United States. I think conspiracy against rights is a really good likelihood. Because the way that the federal statute, criminal statute for conspiracy against rights is constructed, there's almost no effective statute of limitations. There doesn't have to be an overt act to continue the statute of limitations running. As long as people are here's the thing about conspiracy against rights. All right, and here's where it comes from. Really simple case. Carter Page. He was a low-level Trump staffer with the Trump campaign. James Comey, Andrew McCabe. Comey signed 3 FISA warrants, or applications, to surveil Carter Page. Andrew McCabe signed 1 application to surveil Carter Page. They knowingly included false information in the application, submitted it to the FISA court, and got a warrant, essentially, to surveil Carter Page using FISA, which scoops up all information and gives you the ability to go and surveil whoever is in their list of contacts. So all the people on the Trump campaign that Carter Page was communicating with in 2016 and 2017, they were also under surveillance. So Comey's people at FBI were surveilling the entire Trump campaign through FISA, through an application that they knowingly lied about. And Kevin Kleinsmith was the one who lied about whether Carter Page was a CIA asset. And he was, and Kleinsmith changed the answer to, no, he's not a CIA asset, because if he was, they never would have got the application approved. So they had to lie. Comey knew about it. McCabe knew about it. They all knew about it. They conspired to infringe Carter Page's Fourth Amendment constitutional right against unreasonable search and seizure. The conspiracy against rights is when you conspire to deprive somebody of a constitutionally guaranteed right. Fourth Amendment guarantees us the right against unreasonable search and seizure. And when the FBI knowingly lies to the FISA court to illegally surveil the entire Trump campaign, that's conspiracy against rights. That's a felony. And there are other conspiracy charges that I think they could look at. To me, that's a slam dunk one. So even if the making false statements indictment that Comey has been charged with, he's been charged with making false statements to Congress. Brennan is probably going to be charged, same thing. Other people will be charged with that. Whether those charges bring convictions, I don't think is all that relevant, because I think all those characters are going to be wrapped up in a conspiracy investigation, RICO, if you like. And so I think that's where we're going. I think we're in the justice phase, right? So Q told us there were different phases of the operation. There was the initial phase where Q was posting all this information. Like I said, YouTube links, documents, articles, declassified government documents, and all different kinds of information. All of it designed to help us piece together the puzzle pieces to paint the picture of this massive problem of corruption through many sectors of society. We have done the digging. We have helped expose this. We put it out on social media. Most of us got our YouTube accounts and our Twitter accounts and our Facebook accounts suspended because we wanted to put this information out there. That's the cost. We were such a threat to the establishment. They had to go and suspend our accounts. And I'll tell you, just my opinion. You know that somebody is a threat to the establishment if they got their accounts suspended, deplatformed, their payment gateways shut down. Those people, they were the threat. If there's somebody out there on social media who never got suspended, never had any hassles, never got their payment gateways canceled, that person is not a threat. They would have taken them down if they were a threat, right? So we did the digging, we did the exposure, we put it all on social media, and now we're getting to the next phase of the operation, which is justice. There's two phases that are coming. Justice, where there's prosecution and hopefully convictions and jail time. And then there has to be reform of the institutions. The FBI, DOJ, CIA, NSA, they have to be reformed. You know, I would love it if Kash would do what he said he was going to do. You know, let's just go into FBI headquarters, the J. Hoover building, and just burn it all down and take all the agents and fire them. We don't need the FBI. Well, I would have loved that, but that didn't happen. He did fire a lot of people, and he is reforming the FBI. He's getting rid of a lot of the bad people. He's getting the cops out on the streets. They're making massive numbers of arrests of hardcore, long-time criminal, actors. And so the FBI is being reformed. DOJ is being reformed. I have confidence that John Ratcliffe will get the CIA whipped into shape. Would we like to see these agencies go away? Sure, but it's not going to happen. They have to be reformed. That's part of the process. So, we're I hate to say it, but we're kind of past the digging phase. And I've been telling the guys on the thread makers on X, who I was working alongside these guys, Brian Cates, Undercover Huber, Dawson Field, Harold Finch, all these other guys who did all these threads on Spygate. when the FBI and DOJ started putting out these documents They were thinking, oh, we have to go back into digging mode. We have to dig and research and piece together all this stuff and figure it all out and who's behind what. And I was like, guys, you don't get it. The digging phase is over. Trump's people are now in control, and they are going to start dropping documents and declassifying information to support the criminal charges that are coming. You don't have to piece it all together. They've got it all figured out. Tulsi Gabbard and Kash, they've got it. They have all the information that they need. They're going to make it public. And making it public, when you see Tulsi Gabbard, Ratcliffe, Kash on the TV news shows or in the White House press office like they were June, July, and August, they're preparing the American public for what is coming. They're declassifying the information that is going to support the criminal charges against all these people. That's coming. So we don't have to do a lot of digging anymore. That we're in the phase now where good people are in control of the levers of power, and we're going to get to that justice phase, and then hopefully the reform of the institutions. That's kind of where we're at. It's been a long time coming. It's been a long 8 years. Will Q return? I have no idea. I don't know. I suspect Q might return if some of these cats start getting not just indicted, but they go to trial and they get convicted, and Q gets vindicated. I don't know. Q might show up and take a victory lap and do a little bit of trolling of the deep staters. Maybe. And like I said, I don't know. I can't make a prediction of whether Q's going to come back or not. If Q does come back, of course, I will be here doing decodes if necessary. Q, the most recent posts are going back to 2022. They're still kind of cryptic. They still need some decoding. If Q comes back, I would expect there's still going to be a little bit of cryptic messaging that needs to be decoded. If it does, I'll be happy to do what I can to try to clarify these cryptic messages. I will say this, there's still a couple of placeholder posts on Project DCOMS, Q's private board. So Q posts on two different boards. Q Research is the general board where the Anons go on and interact with Q and ask questions and dig and research. There's another board, is Q's private board, called Project DCOMS. There's only a couple of posts on that board, and they're placeholders. And it's indictments tracking civ and non-civ. And Kevin Kleinsmith is the only name on the one indictments tracking placeholder. Is Q going to come back and start filling out names of people that are being indicted, James Comey and other people? I don't know. That's a big question mark. But the placeholder posts are still there, and they could be filled out. So, some people say, oh, Q doesn't need to come back. We've got it all figured out. We have it all. We don't need any more information. Okay, well, that's fine. You can take that attitude. I wouldn't be surprised if Q does come back and maybe highlight some issues and maybe continue the operation. But, like I said, I'm not making a prediction. I don't know. I have never talked to Q. I don't have any insider intel. I don't know anybody in the Trump administration. I'm just an outsider looking at all this stuff as objectively as I can and trying to piece it all together. So there you go. By the way, Q Chronicles. There are 4 books now in the Q Chronicles. And I don't cover all of Q's posts in these 4 books. It's Q Chronicles, book 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are now available on Amazon. We republished them under new titles. And the old books that were blacklisted, well, they're still blacklisted, but the new titles, good to go. So if you want to catch up on the Q operation, there's 4 books. They're on Amazon. They're on Barnes & Noble. You can get them on Apple Books, Nook, Kobo, all the ebook outlets. They're available there as well. like I said, these books do not break down all the Q posts. That would just be an insane project. I take what I think are the most relevant posts, the most relevant subjects, and it's a topical review of Q posts based on subject, and primarily based on the signature that Q uses. And a lot of people don't understand signatures. I'll be honest, if you're listening to somebody who is decoding Q posts and they never mention Q's signatures, you should probably just stop listening to them. Because the signatures literally are the keys that piece together the posts and tell you what the subject of those posts is. And if someone doesn't understand the signatures, then they don't understand the actual subject matter of the posts. They may be able to take all the timestamps and the trip codes and and the post numbers and take all this math and do gematria, but they probably don't understand the actual intended subject matter of the post. That's all found in the signatures, right? Signatures. Iron Eagle, Speed, Snow White, all of those signatures. The Silent War Continues. There's a lot of signatures that Q uses, and you have to understand the signatures to understand what Q is talking about. What do you mean this crazy post that has a bunch of strange references, and at the bottom there's like 2 signatures, Godfather 2 and Iron Eagle. Like, oh, hang on a minute, wait a minute, I know what those 2 signatures mean. That gives me context for what the posts mean, and there's 3 other posts here that have the same signatures, and let's put them all together and see what it means. That's what I do with these books. I take the topics Q has talked about and break them down, layman's terms, show you my research, news articles, videos, all the other information, as much as I can in a book, and explain what these posts are all about. So, like I said, if you're interested, I've got some books out there, and I'm working on a 5th book. The 5th book in a series, I may focus just on Spygate. Look, that's how I got into Q in the first place. I was following the Russiagate hoax. 2016, Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, House Intel Committee. They were digging into this, corruption in the FBI and this surveillance of the Trump campaign. God had me switch from primarily focusing on spiritual teaching. He had me shift to politics, and I was like, "What? The Trump campaign? Like, I don't know anything about Trump and all this stuff." I had to learn. But in 2016, the Lord had me switch over to politics. First the Clinton Foundation, then the Trump campaign, the surveillance, and then Q starts dropping, and that's right. So when Q came along and started posting about FISA, I was like, okay, this is my wheelhouse, baby. Let's go. So I know that the Russia hoax is boring to a lot of people, but it's literally how I got my start in Q. When Q started posting about Comey and Clapper and Brennan and FISA, I was like, okay, I got this stuff. I'm just going to focus on this primarily. Other people have focused on, the Epstein drops and other things. Seems like most people have sort of their niche that they're interested in. My niche has been really the focus of Russiagate, the Russia hoax, and like I said, when I do a 5th book, I may look at the roles of people like Brennan, Clapper, Comey, McCabe, Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett, Obama. What is their role in Spygate, Russiagate, whatever you want to call it? And what has Q said about those people in the posts that might shed a light on their role, and what might happen to them? So I'm just, it's a concept. I haven't actually started working on that book yet, but I may, especially if it looks like that grand conspiracy investigation comes to fruition. People are going to need some information, some background information about who all those people are and why it's relevant. So there you go. We are at about 44 minutes, it looks like. I think it's a good place to to shut down for now. Again, for those of you who are not aware, yes, I got my YouTube channel back after being suspended for 5 years. YouTube channel is back and not monetized, but at least all my old videos are there. I'm going to put up some new videos. There is a lot of information in the last 5 years that I put over on Rumble that I wasn't able to put on YouTube. So now if you get notifications, you've probably gotten like 50 notifications over the last 2 weeks as I'm uploading all these old videos from 2020 and 2019 and 2022 and 2024. Yeah, I'm archiving all of my stuff back on YouTube the way it's supposed to be. However, you'll notice that the Q videos, 3 of them are out of order. And people are asking me like, these videos are like from 2019, they're out of order. What's up with them? Well, I'm an archivist, okay? I tried to keep all the videos in chronological order. However, when a video gets removed from the platform, if you want to re-upload it, you can't retroactively date it. It is going to be dated the day that you upload it. So that's why some of those videos are out of order, because they were removed. Let's see. What else can I tell you? I'm working on a bunch of books. You know what? Hang on a minute. Wisdom for Marriage Made Simple. This is our latest book. Denise and I sat down over the course of a couple months. She wrote her chapters. I wrote my chapters. We wrote a book on marriage. I think if you're having struggles with your marriage, struggles with dating, whether you're newlywed or you've been married for a long time, you might want to check out that book. God has taught us a lot about marriage, relationships, everything from codependency, how to set boundaries, no-lose conflict resolution, and becoming the best version of who God has designed you to be. It's a lot of good information in that book. Again, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever you buy your books, a lot of retail outlets. All right, that is going to be a wrap. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm glad to be back on YouTube. I am looking at the comments on the videos. I found a way the dashboard on YouTube has changed. There's a lot more features on it, but I figured out how to look at comments on YouTube in a kind of a chronological format. And if you drop a comment in there and you ask a question, I will try to, if it's a sincere, reasonable question, I'll try to answer it. Or, you can email me too. Website is prayingmedic.com. On prayingmedic.com, there's a contact tab. You can contact me by email. The email address is admin@prayingmedic.com. Our ministry website is prayingmedic.org. And if you'd like to support our ministry, we do have a donation page on GiveSendGo. It's just givesendgo.com/PM. Tax-deductible donations. We appreciate your financial support. Couldn't do this without you. It's going to do it for today. Love you all. Take care. I will catch you on the next broadcast.